everyone, welcome back to the next video. In this video I will show you how to do GraphQL queries and mutation in .NET. So for this we will be using the HotChocolate framework of GraphQL. So in case if you don't know GraphQL, it is kind of like REST APIs, but here you don't overfetch or underfetch. You only fetch whatever is required. That is the one advantage. Second advantage is it only has one URL. So for all queries and mutations you have one URL. And third thing is that in REST APIs, whatever you have get endpoints, right? So in GraphQL it maps to queries, and in REST APIs you have post, put, delete, patch, whereas in GraphQL you only have mutations which perform everything. So first what I have done is that I have I'll show you my project, but first I'll show you the output. I am running it on localhost /5120/GraphQL, and here I have one mutation called create user. It will create a user for me. It takes a name and it gives you back the ID as well as the name. So I'll enter something like Virat. Okay, and if I run this, here you can see this user was created. Now suppose if I want to fetch this particular user, so I want to fetch this particular user. So for that you use query. So you write something like query, whatever name you want to give, and I'll show you where exactly I have written this query. So here I can just pass this ID of Virat. So I'll just copy this ID. Okay, and I want to fetch this particular user, right? So I will just pass this ID. I'll click on run, and here you can see I'm getting back that particular user. If I want to fetch all the user, I'll just comment this out. I have another query for this users, then ID as well as the name. If I run this, here you can see I'm able to get all the users. Next, in mutation, suppose if I want to update one user, I can just pass the ID again. Okay, and I'll name this as Bumrah. So this is for Virat, so I'm just changing its name. I'll uncomment this update user, run this, and here you can see it is now named to Bumrah. If you want to check, you can run this, and here you can see it has been named to Bumrah as well. And if you want to delete this particular user, you can do that as well. Call delete user. I have this mutation. I'll just need to pass the ID. I'll run it, and it gives a value of true. Now if I run this users query, here you can see Bumrah is no longer present. So that's what we will be doing. First, what you will have to do is, I'm using Postgres database, but you can use whatever you feel like, SQLite or MySQL, but you will have to install that driver accordingly. And if you don't have any paid account of AWS or Google Cloud, if you don't have database, you can use something like Neon Tech. You can just Google it. It provides a free Postgres database, or CockroachDB also provides free Postgres database. So you can use any of those. Then once you create your Postgres database, you will have to inside app settings. Oh, sorry. First I forgot to tell you how to create this project. So first you need to have this .NET installed inside your local PC. And first you will have to go to your terminal and run this command. So this will automatically create a .NET web project for you. Then you will have to do this .NET add package hotchocolate.esp netcore. This is the GraphQL framework. Then we require the entity framework from HotChocolate as well. So run this. Then you will have to run this PostgreSQL entity framework code. Now I'm using PostgreSQL, that's why I'm using this. If you are using MySQL, you can go to NuGet and find the MySQL driver for MySQL driver as well. And you also require this entity framework code design for migrations. So run this as well. Once you have run all this command inside your terminal, what you will have to do is, of course, so once you run this command, you will have to cd to first. I mean, first is my project name. You can name whatever you feel like. Cd to first, and then you run this command. Otherwise this won't work for you. Okay, next you will have to go to app settings.json, and here you will have to add this connection strings of DB connection. Host, write your host name. Port, mostly it is 5432 for Postgres. Then you will have to write your database name, then username, password, and SSL mode I have kept it as required. Once that is done, Next, what you will have to do is you will have to create DTOs. So I have created a folder called DTO, and inside here I have created user DTO.cs file, and it has a GUID ID and it takes a name. That's it. I have kept it simple. I don't want to overcomplicate things. Okay, then we will have to create services. I'll just so here inside services, first you will have to create this MyDB context. You can name it whatever you feel like. Okay, it takes so MyDB context takes DB context options. Okay, and here I have set the user DTO to users. Now suppose if you have some other DTOs as well, like post DTO or I don't know, some other kind of DTO, you will have to add it over here as well. So just like we have added user, something like this, post DTO, you will have to make this as post DTO and post as well. Okay, but I don't have it, so yeah, I have kept it simple. So for now only users. Once you create this DB context file, you will have to go to user. You will have to create a folder called user. Inside that you will have to create a file called user repository.cs, and here this user repository takes an IDB context factory, and here I have just initialized it like dependency injection. Next, for creating a user, or we are doing, firstly we require this DB context factory for everything. Okay, so here you can see for create user, for updating, for deleting, for getting all, for getting one. So this thing is common. Okay, next, for creating a user, all you have to do is context.users.add user DTO. Now this add method is already present inside our user context. We don't have to write each and everything by ourselves. Okay, so that's the advantage of .NET. Then kind of like an ORM, it provides built-in ORM like the entity framework. And here we are just saving our changes. So here we are using async await, so that's why you are saving our changes. And then once we get it, we are just returning the user back. So we are again kind of doing a select statement from our table to get that particular user by its user ID. We can automatically directly return this user DTO as well, but that is not a good practice. That's why here I am returning our whatever is our user, I am returning that back. Okay, next, here inside update, I have done the same thing. We get this context, then we just update the context, call save changes, await it, and then whatever is the first user, I am returning it back. For deleting, again we are creating our context, we are finding the first user, and if the user is equal to null, then I am returning it false. And here I am removing our user, and if context.save changes async is greater than 0, that means the user has been deleted, and I am returning true, otherwise I am returning false. For getting all the user, again we are creating a context, and we are just awaiting our context.users.toList async. Similarly, for getting by ID, here you can do context factory, create our DB context, and here we are just doing context.users.first or default async, and just returning our user DTO. Okay, once this is done, so we are done with services. Okay, next is schema. So typically, if you are from if you have tried GraphQL with Node.js or Spring Boot, you have to define the schema.graphql file, right? But the advantage of HotChocolate is we don't have to define that. It automatically figures that out depending on our code. So here in schema, first I have defined this user type. Ignore this post type, this was just part of my debugging. Okay, inside user type, again this is very much similar to user DTO. If you want, you can directly use user DTO instead of user type, but I wanted to keep it separate. That's why I have defined another class for user type, and same thing, it has an ID and it has a name. Again, ignore this. This was just part of my debugging. Next, you will have to create mutations, and you can name this whatever you want, something like user mutation.cs. if you will have multiple mutation file, like one for user, one for post, one for I don't know, adding one for school, one for college. So this can be anything, like, but given that I only have one table, I have named it as mutation. You can name it user mutation as well if you want to create multiple mutation files, so that it won't be confusing. So here we are just doing dependency injection for user repository. And once the create user is called, for create user we are just calling the create user of our repository, we get a user DTO. If it is not equal to null, then we are just mapping it to our user type, okay, and returning it back. So here we have this create user, right? So accordingly, if you see over here, it creates this mutation for us. We don't need to define it separately inside our code in a .graphql file. Okay, it's smart to do that. So if you have named it something different, then you will have to use something that name over here as well. And this provides IntelliSense as well. So every time you make any changes in your code, and if you are running your GraphQL server, make sure you do this reload schema as well. So here you can see it automatic. I will just place do command space or control space where whatever OS you are using, and it gives you create user update. It automatically gives you. So here I'll just enter bracket, then it tells you that okay, it requires name, add some name, okay. And if I do like this, I'll again do command space, and here it tells me what all output do I have. So everything is for you given, and here we are just calling create user and then mapping it, and if not, then I'm throwing a GraphQL exception. Similarly for update user as well, we are calling this update user repository. Update method insert from user repository and sending back user DTO, and again mapping to the user type, and otherwise throwing a GraphQL exception. Similarly for delete user as well, we are calling the delete method. Now for queries as well, we are doing the same thing. Again you can name it as user query if you want to, and again we are doing dependency injection for user repository. Then we are trying to get all the users of IEnumerable type user type, and here we are just calling user repository dot get all. We get list of user DTOs, and if there are any data inside user DTO, we just map it to user type, okay, and return it back. Otherwise we throw an exception. Similarly for get user by ID as well, we call the get by ID from our user repository, and if it is not equal to null, we return the user type with the ID as well as the name. Otherwise we throw a GraphQL exception. And this I have just created just for my debugging purpose. If you want, you can create it. Not really needed. Like here, this is a hello query which takes a name and just return back the string. So here you can use it something like this, okay. So yeah, the schema part is done as well. Next, okay, to the program.cs file. Next, here you will have to add all these imports. Depending, your imports might change depending on your project name. So here you might already have this var builder web application.create build. So from that we get the iConfiguration file which is required for getting this DB connection. So we require this. Then we add this GraphQL server, and here we add query type. Now this name should be matching with whatever is your file name over here, query, right? Class name or file name, whatever. If you are return it user query, then here also you will have to write user query. Similarly for mutation as well. So I have added both of this. If there are multiple mutations or multiple queries, you can do something like add query type again and again, okay. So it's not mandatory that you have to write all the queries inside one query class. You can have multiple query class. Then here we are just doing this add pooled DB context factory so that we can reuse our DB context, and here we are passing our DB connection for Postgres database, and then here we are adding our scoped user repository, and here we are mapping our GraphQL and then running it. Next, what you will have to do, you also need to install this. So if you don't have this .NET-EF command tool, you can install it using this, and we don't have to manually create table inside our Postgres database. We can use migration for this. So you can directly run .NET-EF migration, add initial migration, so it will create this migration folder for you. And to update inside your database, you just have to create table, you just have to run .NET-EF database update. Suppose tomorrow later on you might change your user tables. You don't want those user tables anymore. So to remove an initial migration, you can just run this .NET-EF migrations remove. It will remove that migration, or you can delete your database if you want, if you feel like if it is just part of your debugging, you can do that as well. So yeah, now you can just to run it, you just open your terminal, do .NET space run, and it should run your application. So let me just check. Yeah, .NET space run, and it will run your application, and it will tell you that it is running on localhost colon 5120, whatever is given inside your terminal over here. But you will have to go to /GraphQL as well, and at the very start you might see where did it go, you might see something like this. Sorry, I'm not able to, I think, do that. You might see two buttons, add document and schema. You can click any of this and you will get a tab like this, and then you can start running your query. But to run a query, you will have to name it as query. This name can be anything, and inside that you will have to run your query. Similarly for mutation as well, you can name it whatever you feel like, and then you can run your mutation. One more thing which I want to test, let's see if it works or not. I think, what if I go to mutations services user repository. Okay, what if I make this as async await as well? Okay, so suppose, I'm not sure if this is a good idea or not, making everything await, but yeah, even I am learning this for the very first time. I don't have much experience with .NET as well. Let's see if I do this. Okay, then this is inside our mutation, right? So I'll just open mutation. Do I see any error? No, I don't. I'll quickly run this. Let's see if it's possible. I think using async is a better idea, but you should be little careful on not making everything as async. So I'll just refresh this. Okay, so we did it for create user, so I can name it whatever I want, Rahul, I guess. If I run this, yeah, it works. So I think you can make this as async as well. Similarly over here, I think we can do it like this. No, update is, I think, synchronous. This is, and here we can do first or default async, and we can write await over here. And again here we can do first or default async. We can make this await. Can we do this remove async? No, we can't. Save changes is already async, and here this is already async, and this is already async. Okay, let me just try once more. I'll just quickly run this again. Even if you try to completely do a hard refresh of your browser, still this is persisted, so you don't have to worry about it. So here I'll just name this as something else. I don't know, RAM. I'll run this. Okay, I'm getting RAM. Now I'll quickly run our users query. Okay, I'm getting this. If I do this, if I uncomment this out, if I get this particular user, okay, and if I run this, if I run, okay, I'm getting RAM. And what if I update the name? Okay, I'll have to enter the ID of RAM, then I'll make it as Lakshman. Okay, I'll comment this out. Okay, I want to run. Okay, this has been updated to Lakshman. Okay, let's see. Okay, it is giving me Lakshman. And next, if I want to delete this particular user, whether it's been getting deleted or not. Okay, delete it. And if I run this, okay, user not found, that's fine. And if I run get all users query, yeah, I don't see Lakshman. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Bye.